this April 4th meeting of the Citizens Police Advisory Council. I'd like to welcome everybody. I'm going to say we've got a lot of people in the room. We've got a lot of people online. You'll hear a little bit later on. We've got some new faces that we don't normally see at our meetings, and Chief Walker will address that a little bit later. Some of the new folks that we've got on board. First thing I want to do as part of this, as part of our welcome, I do want to welcome our newest member, Colby Holofield. Great to have you. Colby is one of the mayor's selections, so really great to have you. You ready to start working?
Ready to go.
Yeah, this is one of those where we put you to work right away. So before we move to the first part of the agenda, I would like to make a motion to amend the agenda. There's one piece that I do want to amend. It does take a 2/3 vote to do that. So the piece I want to do is under item 7E, where it says communications subcommittee.
Have make a motion to create an executive subcommittee.
Not yet. What we're doing is we're just making a motion to amend the agenda. So under 7E, I just want to amend the agenda to say create communications subcommittee - appointment of new chair. So adding the word creation.
So moved.
Any discussion? Okay, for this vote, because it has to be counted, Steve?
Can we do a roll call first, then we know who we have? And then
Oh, you're right. We got to do a quorum. See, that's why we keep me in line. All right, let's do this before we do that motion. Jill, if you would do the roll call, please.
Sure. Councilmember Twan Fielding. Councilmember Doris Grant.
Here.
Thank you. Councilmember Jerome Harris.
Present.
Thank you. Councilmember Colby Holofield.
Here.
Thank you. Councilmember Tom Hummel.
Here.
Thank you. Councilmember Jamie Kahn.
He's up there.
I see you up there, Jamie. I'm
He's
going
on
to
the
count your
screen.
present. Thanks. Councilmember Joseph Kraus.
Here.
Thank you. Councilmember Philip Lucier.
Here.
Thank you. Councilmember Sarah Mack. I see you, Sarah. I'm going to count you as present. Councilmember Harrison McIver. Councilmember David Sonye.
Here.
Councilmember Paul Tamburino.
Here.
Councilmember Liliana Taylor.
Present.
Thank you. Councilmember Imogene Thomas. Here. All right, thank you. That concludes the roll call.
And do we have a quorum?
Yes,
So we have 12 of our 14 here.
correct.
So we do have a little 2/3. Okay, perfect. Okay, so thank you for that correction. So I do want to make a motion to amend the agenda, section 7, part E, to create communications subcommittee.
I'll make that motion.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you. So let's move on to, as part of, we did the roll call. Steve, do you have an update on the 4 vacancies that we currently have?
I did receive from council members Seekings a nomination, and we've sent the application link to that person, and we're waiting on them to fill out the application, which would then go to council for consideration.
Okay, perfect. I sent out a reminder to the others. I haven't heard back, so I'll send a note to the mayor's office, hearing no change. I'm just sending the mayor's office there his selections to make. If he makes those before if they make a selection before he does, that's fine. But it's now the mayor's selection. They've had well over 30 days to appoint. And they haven't.
Mr. Chairman, if I could.
Yep.
I spoke with Councilman Waring, submitted a name to the mayor, and I believe that name was appointed by the mayor already to fill that slot. I just think we should clarify that.
Okay, so he's doing it as a mayor's selection.
I had a conversation with him, and he said that he has submitted a name. Okay, and he believed that name had moved forward. All right, but not as his nomination. So
it was a 2-for-1. Two people want to nominate the same person, somebody adopted. Okay. Yes, sir.
I believe I'm Boyd Gregg's selection for District 1 as opposed to a mayor's selection.
Was he under Greg?
I'm not sure. Councilman Gregg asked me to do
I
it.
think, I believe I may have my notes wrong. It could be.
And I believe that
Yes.
is
Council-
correct.
Council
Yes.
District one.
He
So
had
that's
no
correct.
name. That's
Yeah, the only ones I believe we have, student selection.
correct.
And then we have 3 of the districts. So, again, the word's out to them. If the mayor fills it before they do, it's whoever comes first. But I will notify him that we do have those selections available for him. So you all know, I did send another note to the council members, reminding them again, that's in place. All right. Part 3, we have citizen participation. Before I recognize our citizen that's currently here, Jill, do we have anybody?
We did have one written statement. So we have a written statement for citizens participation was submitted by Anthony Bryant, and without objection will be included in the meeting minutes for this meeting.
Any objection to the citizens? Citizens sent a pretty lengthy letter that they wanted to have submitted for our meeting. So as Jill's saying, does anybody object to that being moved into our minutes of the meeting? All right. We'll accept those. Any others?
No, sir.
Okay, and I believe we have one citizen, Suzanne Hardy. I think we have the floor, ma'am.
Can I just sit here? Or you do up there?
Oh, you're right there. Everybody's
Oh.
watching you.
Oh,
Yeah.
Suzanne Hardy, representing Cajun. First, I want to express our enthusiasm for the establishment of CPAC's ERNA subcommittee. We see this as an important step forward in leadership by CPAC. This is great, with, good potential to positively impact the future of policing in Charleston. Cajun is eager to be a resource to CPAC and the subcommittee, as well as to continue being an active partner in enabling a more equitable, peaceful, and safe city with a transparent and equitable police department. For those of you who attended the forum, that impressive turnout of almost 300 people is a testament to the community's interest in that aspiration. Going forward, there are 3 projects we would like your help to get some specific information on. First is CPD's response to the ERNA report. These are the questions that we have. What is the timing for the comprehensive response and action plan? Will it include specific plans to understand and address the racial disparities in motor vehicle stops? How and when will CPACs or CPD inform and engage the public on the report? And what's in place or needs to be in place to ensure ongoing transparency and monitoring the department's progress on addressing the report's recommendations, specifically on racial disparity. The second project is on CPD's 2023 report. We'd like to know, when will that report be complete and published, and how will CPD communicate and engage the public on the findings and data? And the third, perhaps most important for the group here, is on the strategic plan. What's the timeline for that project? How will CPAC and CPD engage the public in the development of the plan to ensure their input and transparency? Will the ERNA findings and recommendations be incorporated in the strategic plan? And how will CPAC, CPD communicate progress on the strategic plan to the public?
Thank you very much. And I've also submitted that in writing, that copy of that to Jill. So we're going to include those as part of our minutes. Just so you know, Suzanne will also email a copy of it, so we
Please.
have an electronic copy, but
Thank you.
I want to make sure that we did submit those written. Thank you very much, Suzanne. And I look forward to you staying for the rest of the meeting. You may hear some of that addressed.
I'm looking forward to it.
So do we. So there you go. Are there any other citizens here to participate? All right, thank you. So the next item for approval is the approval of minutes. So just for the record, our December 2023 minutes, we took those up in February. We failed to get a proper motion and second on the minutes. So we need to just redo that. That's why we've got it on the schedule again. So if everybody's had a chance to review the December 2023 minutes, is there a motion to pass those minutes as published?
So moved.
Right, do I have a second?
Second.
Imogene, okay, is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Now, for the February 2024 minutes. Do we have a motion to accept those as published?
So moved.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries, minutes are approved. All right, next up, we are going to hear from Chief Walker. Let's see if he can come off mute.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes,
Yes, sir.
Hey, how's everybody doing? Welcome, welcome, welcome. Any new members?
yeah,
That's
we
okay.
have Councilmember Holyfield.
Well, welcome on behalf of the police department. Welcome. Look forward to working with you. Sorry I couldn't be there in person. Kind of had a prior engagement that I couldn't miss here. So, but real quick, just a couple quick updates for this group. Last 2 months, we've been really focused on the promotion and restructuring of the agency. So it's really pretty much taken a lot of our time. So effective this past Monday, we made a round of promotions to include 1 deputy chief, 2 captains, 2 lieutenants, and 3 sergeants. So that will be published out. Its effective date is April the 13th. Yep, April the 13th. So I get something, Paul, to you in the group so you can see, but and cordially invite everyone to the promotion ceremony, which will be some point later next month. So that's a lot of time and effort has been going through that. That process is not for the faint of heart. There's a lot of interviews around the sergeants. 3 sergeants got promoted this round. So it's just a lot. Let me see if my camera, I'm trying to get my camera up there. Can y'all see me? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So those promotions, so April the 13th is the effective date. Just been working on that. Also restructuring. That's one of the things we're trying to do as far as efficiency at the agency. And the restructure include not only just positions and things like that, but also some insignia and ranking and files. So a lot of that communications went out through the department. So that also will take place on the 13th. I heard Suzanne. Welcome, Suzanne. Glad to see you in person there. Sorry I couldn't be there, but I know there's some questions that got brought up with the reports. Those reports will be published in the upcoming days. Literally, they will go to the mayor and his administration for review. That includes the overall report for the annual report, the IA report, and the ERA response. So, like I say, it's just been a real busy couple of months from February to March, moving into April. Not only are we working on that, this, as you know, this tennis tournament just started up on Daniel Island. That began last weekend. So a lot of resource time and planning been going into that. We're also working towards the bridge run this week. That's probably one of the largest events that we have, looking at probably 30,000 people in attendance for that. So just a lot of moving parts. But I got a couple minutes for some questions and answers, Paul, if you had anything for the good for me. But that's for overall reporting. That's pretty much it. It's just a lot of moving parts with the restructuring and org. So
I'll open it up to the floor first.
I have a question. Chief, does that promotion process, is that complete now for, what you intended to get done?
yeah, I mean, it is. It's been like drinking water out of a fire hose. So hopefully some of these things, it's all designed for efficiency and making the organization a little more efficient in its operations. So one particular promotion in particular was the executive deputy chief of police. That's a formal number 2 who will run the day-to-day operations of the agency. That is Deputy Chief Jack Weiss. And you will be meeting all these people once everything goes into place. The Deputy Chief of Support Services is going to be Deputy Chief Andre Jenkins. I see Lieutenant Mitchell is on here. She has been elevated to the rank of captain. I see Shane Gibson is on here. Anthony has been elevated to the rank of lieutenant. Eric Light has been elevated to the rank of lieutenant. and Patrick McLaughlin elevated to the rank of captain. So, but yeah, that's really getting my team in place to kind of carry out some of the objectives that I'm trying to do through the agency and for the community.
Thank you.
Anybody else? This is your chance. He's right there. All right. So in a side conversation I had with Chief Walker, where he kind of let me know some of these changes, he is going to send us once you know he's got a chance. He's going to send a copy of the new org chart. So not only are there promotions, but there's reassignment of some of the key players. It directly impacts us. So there's going to be some changes on there. So I've asked him for a copy of that. Once I have that, I'll distribute it out to the rest of CPAC. Because even for your subcommittees, it'll switch up a little bit who your primary liaison is going to be. Again, it takes effect, like he said, on the 13th. So give them a couple days to get settled into their new chairs and pin on the new rank if they're getting new rank. I do want to say, just as a personal point of preference, congratulations, Captain Mitchell. Been a long time. You deserved it for a long time. So good to see you recognized, and we look forward to working with you. We're a tough group, so get ready.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and Paul, if I may add, with that being said, there's going to be some restructuring how we operate as far as just efficiency, even with this particular group. So we'll get all that ironed out as far as areas and jobs and responsibilities just moving forward. Like I say, everything is designed for efficiency and better communication, and that's throughout the organization. So, and I will encourage our new members and those that haven't been. We got the Citizens Academy that starts next week. I encourage you to, if you got some time, to take part. I heard something mentioned about traffic stops once again. Everything that we do is covered during that Citizens Academy. You don't pick and choose where you want to go to. So if you want to be engaged and know firsthand what this agency is about, I encourage you to take part in it.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments for the chief? All right, Chief, hopefully you can stick around. Some of these things we're going to talk about need your wisdom and opinion, and love for you to weigh in. So if you can stick around, that'd be great.
Yep.
Okay, so as far as the next item, the chair's update, really it's just administratively. Most of my efforts have been administrative. I think everybody's doing a great job. I think the real effort that I've been putting forth for the past couple of months is really empowering the subcommittees. I've made my own decision that as chair, a chair is typically, per Robert's Rules of Order, a chair is typically an ex officio member of every one of the committees, right? And while I'm a member of it, I've chosen to kind of step back. I know, the chair has always historically sat in the subcommittee just because we want to be an extra voting member to give you a quorum and extra eyes. But as we're building more and more of those, I truly, as a leader, believe in separation and, just empowering folks to do their job without somebody, an overwatch. So that's why it's becoming more and more important that the subcommittees themselves, good management of them, clear understanding of what they're doing. And so that when you come to these meetings, I'm pretty much, when I see the minutes and I see different things, hearing in real time, and I'm not trying to put my thumbprint on anything. Just really the chair presides. The chair is not president of anything. They just preside over a meeting. And I think that's really my goal. So I appreciate all the work the subcommittees have been doing. We still have some fine tuning of each one of them. Just getting some understanding, some of the administrative. I do want to see, I will say up front, if you're a member of CPAC, you need to be a member of at least one of the subcommittees. I mean, that's our charge, is to come in here and do work. And so please align with one of the subcommittees you have the most interest in. You want to be on all of them, as some people are. God bless, they could use the help, but please try to make a point. If you're going to be a member of CPAC, please be a part of at least one of those. The only other, I'll throw out the commercial that the chief did, Citizens Police, the Police Academy. If you haven't done it, I think most of us have done it. If you haven't done it, wholeheartedly do it. It's a great experience. Ride-alongs. I know nobody talks about it, but if you haven't done a ride-along, try to make it a point of doing one at least. I try to do it once every quarter or so, but do it because you're dealing with a leadership team, and if you really want to have a different perspective, ride with a person in the field. Okay, not with lieutenant or a captain or the chief, but ride with a patrolman who's going around doing their day-to-day job. They can sugarcoat it for maybe 30 or 40 minutes for you, but then it becomes their normal routine and you're just there, right? And so you're going to see some of the things that they do. And, you know, education's a two-way street, right? You can educate them on some of the things that CPAC's doing. At the same time, you're getting an education from them. Okay. And that's our responsibility to do that. So that's why ride-alongs are not just because it's fun, because yeah, it can be fun. It can be real boring. Welcome to the day in the life of a police officer. It's, you know, it's not what we see on TV every day. So I do encourage you guys to do that. I think I've already gone over the fact that the chief and I have talked and we've gone through just more of administrative stuff. We've not really gotten into a lot of policy or any of that kind of stuff. He's been hunkered down doing his thing. And like a lot of y'all, sometimes my job comes into play and they take a priority, and they've done that pretty well for the past couple of months. So that's that. I'll be out of the country for a couple of weeks coming up, but I mean, Jerry, nothing normally comes up for us, but Jerry's got the helm while I'm gone. So I'll make sure he's clear to go with that. If there's any need, I think a point came up from one of the subcommittees about their meeting schedule, and sometimes the work of a subcommittee is a little bit more urgent than, you know, we meet every 2 months. And if they've got a pressing matter, I did advise them, you can call, any member can try to institute an emergency meeting. I mean, let's make sure it's not just, hey, I just want to do it. But if you've got something that you think is very timely and needs to be done, we can certainly call an emergency meeting. Now, the rules around an emergency meeting is that's the only thing that goes on the agenda. And really, that's all we talk about. You don't talk about anything. We don't bring up something that's new to that meeting. It's a specific agenda that's in place. So we can do that. I'm very open to doing that. I know Jerry, if I'm not available, Jerry's very open to chairing one of those. We just get the agreement based on our guidelines on calling one of those, so you don't have to wait. Same thing for CPAC. Any one of us can do that. So it doesn't have to be a subcommittee chair. If you as a member think there's something urgent nature that you want to address as a group, that's the way to do that. All right. I'm not going to belabor anything. Anybody have any questions for me on what I'm doing? Awesome. Anybody online? Raise your hand. Yes, sir.
Online.
Yes, sir.
Vice Chair. The work of the committees, I'd urge each of the, actually, if you're thinking about going on to a committee, I'd urge you to read the guidelines, because that can kind of give you a sense of what our overall limitations, particularly for the members. That's really important. It also will be very helpful as we're moving forward. And members, whatever your particular expertise, whether it's communication, finance, human resources, it'll be helpful for the chair to know. So as we're thinking about how we do our work, all right, that we can tap into that, because you may have an expertise for a committee that you're not serving on. That committee chair needs to know that, right, to be able to tap into it. So I think that's important for us to think about.
Very good. Thank you. And also, at any given moment, based on your expertise and your participation, we're volunteers, right? Something happens on any given day, I may need to appoint a new subcommittee chair just for different, nothing wrong, just because people move along, interests change, work gets in the way, we have all kinds of things happen. So your involvement in a subcommittee is really critical for the continuity of the work of that subcommittee. As different people come on and off and move around, that continuity is huge. So Jerry, that's great.
So, and the other thing, and again, for the newer members, understanding how we're structured, and the leadership roles, spend some time talking to Paul and chatting with me. The chairs and vice chair positions are 1 year situations, and would be good to have rotations and people involved. So don't be a shrinking violet, right? If you're good at running meetings, all right, and coordinating things, we should know that, because the chair and vice chair need to move.
And as Jerry will tell you, I'm great at saying I either have a volunteer or a voluntold. I don't mind voluntolding, so I'll reach out to somebody and say, hey, you're it, well, I didn't volunteer for that. I get it. Yeah, you did. That's an old Army thing. Appreciate that, Jerry. Anybody else have anything like that? All right, so I'm going to move on forward and we're going to do the subcommittee reports. So as you know, we had written reports in advance. Before we start the subcommittees, I do want to address the written reports. And so going forward, we do need to change that up a little because what we had said originally, put this on me, that's my error. I was allowing subcommittees saying, hey, just if you want to just submit your minutes as your report, you're good to go. But the reality is the way minutes work is your subcommittee needs to meet again to approve the minutes from the prior meeting. So, and another point to make when we're submitting things like minutes, a minute is not an opportunity to editorialize. It's a reflection. It's a legal representation of the meeting. What motions were made, who was in attendance, timing, right? You don't really, according to how Robert's rules work, you don't really get into what the debate was and all that. It's really your formal record of it. And so I'll talk with the subcommittee chairs. We'll clean up some of these minutes a little bit. So even though we've published these minutes as a part of our agenda, they are not being accepted as official minutes to CPAC because your subcommittee has not gone through the process of approving those. At your next meeting, please do that. So what I would ask you is for your subcommittee reports going after this meeting, of course, a brief summary sent out. It doesn't need to include your minutes because your minutes are not official yet. So just a brief summary. Now, the good news is for subcommittee chairs, when you do that and it's coming in as a summary, you can throw, editorials, just make sure it's reflective of your subcommittee, not of your personal beliefs, because you're representing an entire subcommittee. If you've got personal, on your own, you've got opinions that you want to give, you can submit those as an individual to CPAC because you're a member, but keep your subcommittee as a reflection of the work of your subcommittee. Okay. Any questions or concerns? I mean, we're just fixing a couple of the administrative things. We've kind of been playing a little bit loose for the past few years. And as we get bigger and we become really more relevant, we want to make sure we're doing it the right way so that we can withstand any scrutiny that we get. And if you're a good organization, you're going to get scrutiny and we invite it and we want to make sure we're doing the right thing. We're holding the department accountable for what they're supposed to do. We have to hold each other accountable for what we do. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to, let me see. It's actually, I think when I did the amended, I think I did it wrong. So let me go backwards. When I amended the agenda, I said the communication subcommittee. The communication subcommittee already exists. It's executive subcommittee. Okay. So Steve, how should I?
So I amend my motion to correct it to executive committee.
Do we have a second?
Whoever seconded needs to agree to that.
Okay, I've got Imogene seconding it. So that's a correction to the agenda. It's not communication subcommittee creation, it's executive subcommittee creation. All right. Is there any discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Question.
Any opposed?
I had a question.
Yes, sir. Oh, excuse me.
What is the executive committee? What is it supposed to do?
We don't know yet. That's why we're talking about the creation of it. So we'll have a separate motion for the creation of it, and then we'll speak to that. This is just putting on the agenda to even talk about the creation, because what happened is, I don't know if you were here when we did the ERA subcommittee last time. We didn't do, according to the recording, we didn't do the proper motion to create it. We just put it on the agenda as though it actually existed, and the agenda was supposed to read creation of it.
Reviewing the minutes, you spoke it into existence.
Say again?
Reading the minutes, you spoke it into existence. There was a discussion and literally we said, okay, let's have a subcommittee. There was not a vote.
I agree.
Yeah.
This is my mistake. Yeah, no, I get
we
it.
good.
So we're, okay. Any other discussion on amending the agenda to change it from create communications subcommittee to create executive subcommittee? Hearing no more discussion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. All right, so
I'll go ahead and make a motion to create the executive subcommittee.
all right, do you want, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Do you want to speak to your motion?
It would be great to have, the different people that lead all the various subcommittees getting together and communicating with each other and talking and having more organization for us all.
Anybody have any questions on that?
So is that what the executive subcommittee is a subcommittee of subcommittees?
Yeah, I think what we're looking at is like other groups that, normally it's normally when you read bylaws, it's typically part and parcel of those. Like everybody's got an executive committee because it wasn't outlined in ours. We have to go through the motion of creating it so that if the chair and the vice chair and the subcommittee chairs meet, we have the ability to meet together. Now, with that said, that's a subcommittee like any other. It's open to, the sunshine laws and all the different, open records. We have to publish an agenda. We have to announce our meeting. We have to invite the public to attend. So this isn't like, we're going out for coffee. 4 of us are getting together for coffee and, talking about this stuff. Just like any elected officials, we have to go through the proper motions to do that. So in order for us to meet and talk about some of this stuff in between meetings and go over some of the administrative stuff that we don't want to bog down CPAC in general and the public, just in a general CPAC meeting, an ability to do that. Yes, sir.
Is it now the time that we talk about the composition of the executive committee, being the chairs of the subcommittees of CPAC, and the notion of what authority does the executive committee has or responsibility? For example, if a subcommittee has a suggestion for an action to be taken, okay, if that subcommittee recommends it to the executive committee and it comes from the executive committee to a general CPAC meeting, all right, is that the process? Particularly since you're saying that if we have a meeting and a subcommittee takes an action, that action is not ratified until after the minutes are approved. So I'm just trying to figure out how to is the executive purpose of executive subcommittee to get to CPAC the action recommendations of the subcommittees?
From my perspective, I'm one member, no different than you all in this discussion. My perspective is I really wouldn't want to envision the executive subcommittee making any decisions that need a motion that come out of it, because other than, hey, I think we need, as we're talking amongst ourselves, maybe we should recommend to CPAC that we create another subcommittee. But I don't know that I foresee that executive subcommittee, and just me, and this is a discussion for all of us, I personally don't consider the scope of it. We're going off we're having those types of discussion. I look at this as more, from my perspective, administrative. If there's, we're talking about how getting people to participate in your subcommittee, maybe talking about how you're doing the minutes, talking about, hey, let's brainstorm some content for meetings and stuff like that, but not really having we've made a decision and we want to bring that decision to CPAC and have them ratify the decision. That's just my perspective.
That was not my suggestion. My suggestion is that if a subcommittee meets and says we need to have communications committee says we need to have a forum date at, on a topic. Okay. Given the cycle of meetings, all right, it might be 4 months before that's actually acted on. If the executive committee says, here's that, and says, yeah, we need to move on it, but we have to present it to the CPAC to vote on. So we don't, because we meet every other month instead of every month, I'm just suggesting that is a way of moving things forward if the executive committee thinks so. Or I'm just thinking about that.
We went through that for communications subcommittee. We did that. So those of you that are new, we had a communications subcommittee. It's kind of been dormant, but it's created, so we don't have to recreate it. And we were coming up with public sessions, and we wanted to be able to move in real time. So we did as a subcommittee. I was the subcommittee chair. brought it to CPAC and we all voted on the subcommittee, and we brought it to CPAC and said, we don't have the time, the bandwidth to keep waiting for 2 months. Now we have another. We asked CPAC to empower us to make our own decision on what our topics would be, our schedule would be, without having to go through, okay, let's go back and have a formal approval. Everybody gets to weigh in on what our topic is. Are you empowering the subcommittee to make that decision and move forward? So the communications, that's in place for them. Can you foresee, I mean, I know what you're talking about, Steve, is that, would a committee be able to be empowered to make those types of offline? Because I mean, this is different than Robert's rules. This is more state law now.
I think we'd have to probably take it on a case-by-case basis.
Jerry, you're not inferring that, say, my subcommittee, the ERA subcommittee, has to go to executive subcommittee to get to CPAC. I'm hoping, right?
No, I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm just saying if in the event, and I'm thinking about the sequence, in the event that a subcommittee is recommending an action, right, that should be acted on at the next CPAC meeting, right? And because we have to have another committee meeting before the minutes are approved, all right, I'm suggesting that
Wouldn't you
action,
still
an
want
action
it
item
the
could be
same-
part. I'm just saying, and I may be making a mountain out of a molehill, but I'm just suggesting
Right.
that
I may have a
might be
good
the
example.
next
Go
I
ahead.
think you'd still run into the same issue, though, that you would then be sort of usurping the rules of the subcommittee by sending it to executive committee to then to CPAC. Wouldn't you still have to approve the minutes in order for it to come to CPAC? Because then it would.
I'm
just
trying to get around that as a.
But let me just fix that. So they don't have to, the minutes don't have to be, if the motion carries, the minutes just a reflection of what happened. Their minutes passing could happen 3 months from now. It could be brought to CPAC the next day. Because once the motion carries.
Direct from committee. It could come
Yeah,
straight.
correct. And it doesn't need a motion because it's coming from a committee. Now, Jerry, I've got a better example for you on something that maybe an executive committee could, it's not a policy change. It's not a change to anything we do, but having Suzanne here is a good example. So CAJM constantly has something going on where they, hey, we'd like you to participate. We'd like you to send a representative, do something like that, right? And, you know, it's in real time. You know, we don't normally get 3 months notice. It's usually a few days.
Tomorrow.
Well, it's usually, well, it's not dogging you. I'm trying to support you.
Yeah. No, I
So
agree.
let me support you for a minute. So if they ask for a representation or something like that, if an executive committee can meet rather than having to bring all of CPAC together to say, yeah, I mean, because it's really not, is it really a decision? That's what I'm saying is, you know, as chair, I can name, I can go be representative, or I could turn to somebody and say, hey, you know, can you go represent us real quick? So I'm
Okay.
I think that's kind of what you're getting, and not, no,
Right. I don't want to.
subcommittee will never go through an executive. You're not getting another layer of
Right.
bureaucracy.
Right.
What he's trying to do is cut through a layer. If there's something timely that's really not the business of, hey, we need to gather all CPAC for emergency meeting because we want somebody to go to a CAJM meeting tomorrow. That's really not, even then, I don't know, we need to go to executive. It's
Again, just trying to think about.
No, but I mean, this is
reality in
something
terms
we,
of time.
as we build this, we're building the guidelines that come into play. Did anybody online have any feedback? Because I know we're not turning, look, Jill, you're
Any
watching.
hands and nothing in the chat.
All right, okay. Yes, sir.
Let's maybe ask a question to maybe help conversation here. Is it really a subcommittee that you're wanting, or more like an executive committee of positions? Like some other larger boards have a chair, a vice chair, a secretary, and those type of positions that, and you know, sometimes a sergeant at arms is just kind of like a fourth member, so that they help organize, and that way it's not all on the chair since this is volunteer positions. Is that more what you're looking for?
It's- well,
Or you
that's-
just want a subcommittee of.
No, and that's what I was saying is normally what you would see on a board, any other board, as part of their covenants or whatever whatever their documentation is, the formation.
Right.
They will typically do that up front and say, we always have, and it's a formalized in there. But because it's not formalized for us, we have to actually call it out and say, okay, we're going to create this executive subcommittee. We're going to call it executive subcommittee just because we call everything subcommittee, because it's not codified already. And so how do we meet as a group and publicize it? If somebody comes back and says, well, who is this executive subcommittee? When did that happen? Who told you you could get together? Who are the members of it? this is the creation, and that's what we're trying to do. All right, any other discussion on that?
Do we need to formalize who the members of that subcommittee are, that they are the chair of each other subcommittee, or is that just, it's a committee and any member can join?
Yeah, I would, I mean, my recommendation is, Dave, when you restate, I'll ask Dave to restate it, and then I'll restate it. It's just the creation of a subcommittee, executive subcommittee consisting of, my recommendations, I wouldn't limit it by naming the subcommittee chairs. I would say the chairs of any subcommittee, current or created in the future. And the chair and the vice chair, and it, you know, if anybody thinks there should be somebody else on there, yeah, that's great. But I think that's the motion, so that we have that. That's the only piece we really need to codify. Anybody disagree or have any feedback on that? All right, we're gonna get out of the minutia of this kind of nonsense. This is, it's important. It's what we have to do. All right, Dave. I'll
All
let
right,
you-
so restate the motion to create an executive subcommittee consisting of the chairs of each of the subcommittees, current and future, as well as the current chair and vice chair of CPAC.
Right, is there a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion? All right, all in favor of the motion, say aye. Raise your hand. On, let me see. Anybody opposed? Okay, motion to create executive subcommittee consisting of subcommittee chairs, past, current, and future, as well as the chair and the vice chair motion has passed. Thank you. All right, so I don't have a report on that because we just created it. But what that's going to give us an ability to do is just meet. Yes, sir. We got who's the question?
Hey, Paul, can I ask a quick question with that? You know, and just for resource purposes with this the subcommittee. Now, is this going to be independent? This is going to be CPAC. This is not going to be CPD. So when y'all call these meetings, you know, or have your minutes, it's going to be a more of an independent CPAC function that can be handled amongst the CPAC executive board.
Yes, absolutely. The only thing that we'll need your resource for is just publicizing our agenda. And that's it. We'll submit it to her. She publicizes it. We can maintain our own Zoom session. We'll coordinate, we can coordinate, Jill, we can coordinate with how we do that publicly and do a public Zoom to do that. So, but Jill would not need to attend, or one of your representatives would not need to attend. If we want, we can. Hold on, let me pause.
Oh, I'm sorry, that wasn't the lecture. There was another person. We're good. Keep going.
Okay.
Yes.
Certainly, just like with a subcommittee, we may want to invite you to participate. We may want to invite somebody.
Yeah.
But you're not, there's no requirement. It'd be an invitation like any of the subcommittees, right?
Okay. No, and that's helpful.
Yeah, this is just to do administrative things, but based on the requirements that we have, and you know, our guidelines say we're supposed to have a city liaison for the purposes of not taking minutes, because subcommittees take their own minutes. We established that years ago. That we didn't, the minutes were taken for us only during our CPAC by a city representative, which I think they're doing. Subcommittees have done their own minutes, so they'll do everything administratively. The only thing that we would ask of our liaison resource is the publishing of our agenda, which we'll submit, the publishing of our minutes when we have our minutes, as well as helping us to create, if we need, however we need to create a Zoom session for the public. Because if I use mine, I can't invite the public. So I think there's a formal way of doing that.
We're using our CPD account for that.
Right.
So we'll talk offline.
You can always make me a code. I know how to do that, so
Yeah.
I'll work with you. That satisfy you? You don't have to come to another meeting?
No, and like I said, and it kind of goes into like the restructuring, the reorg for efficiency. Like I say, man, there's a lot of different moving parts. So, you know, you'll see Tony, you all know Tony Cortella. Tony will be pretty much the acting chief of staff. That's going to be his new role. And then he's going to be implemented a lot of what we're doing with the group in conjunction with Jill. So I'm trying to wrap my head kind of around what you're planning on doing, especially with the addition of a new subcommittee.
We're doing that to talk about you guys without you there.
But that's perfectly fine.
There you go. No, this is more administrative. So we had already foreseen it. It wasn't, we weren't looking for your resources. We don't need Jill on the call. There may be times we may invite her if she wants to, or you, or anybody else, but we're
And that's
really
fine.
not to conduct CPAC business. This is more of our behind the scenes administrative, not behind the, I mean, obviously anybody can watch and listen.
Yeah.
But our invited guests will be very specific.
Got it. Thank you. No, I'm good.
All right, so let's move on unless somebody's got any questions. Let's move to policies and procedures. Doris?
Good evening, everyone. Just wanted to highlight some areas from our the policy subcommittee March 7th meeting. We received a review from CPD staff on GO 30, which is authorization to exercise alternatives to arrest. We were informed that section 30.2, 30.4, and 30.5 will be removed from that policy. We were also updated that the policy continues to be updated and changes, and that those ongoing changes will be incorporated into the policy. And that policy will be provided to the policy subcommittee for comments once it is filtered through the established policy review process. And with that statement, which is bullet 4 on our meeting summary, that sentence will be updated to include policy. We also received a response from staff, CPD staff, on GO 81 and 82. And from GO 81, there were 9 recommendations to the policy that were accepted and adopted by the department. GO 82, there were 5 of the 20 recommendations to the policies that were accepted and adopted. There was also a discussion on should the department be looking in details at policies to determine if multiple policies or possibly duplication or conflicting or possibly duplicated that's causing confusion and may contribute to disparities in process and possibly affect data reporting. So our subcommittee is going to further have that discussion at our next meeting. And that pretty much ends my report.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for policy subcommittee? Doris, you got off easy. You did a great job. Your written report was excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, next up is the complaint review subcommittee. Councilmember McIver, who chairs that subcommittee, is not available today. So I believe Councilmember Khan is going to do that. Jamie?
Yes. Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Sorry I couldn't be down there tonight with you all. It's my daughter's birthday and we have some plans this evening. We have unapproved minutes that were submitted as part of the package the other day, but we had our first substantive meeting with the department on March 18th. And at that meeting, we reviewed the professional standards dashboard with Lieutenant Bailey and Captain Cretella. We learned how to navigate that and understand the data that's contained in the dashboard. We then looked at the statistical data of complaints from years 2021, 22, and 23, and understood how we would be operating going forward with that data and understanding how it's reported out of the department. We plan to meet either quarterly or semi-annually as a subcommittee. And we look forward to moving forward as a subcommittee with the department and now understanding how we're going to operate.
Any questions or comments for the complaints subcommittee?
I did have one looking at, I believe it was item 6 on those unapproved minutes. This was a question about what files would be available. Was it going to be summaries only, or was it going to be complete files? And I was a little unclear. If you ask for a file and are provided a summary, and then go on and say, we want to look into this further, I'd like to see the full file. What was the department's position on that?
So, you know, I know Steve is in the room, and he can chime in if he'd like, but we did have a discussion relative to what the scope or breadth of the complaint review would be by the committee. And the general consensus is that we would be provided first this statistical data that we all actually can have. It's available online for the public. But if we would like to look into complaints further, we would be provided summaries of those complaints. And there's a process that has to be requested through Chairman Tamburino at a CPAC meeting, I believe. But the summaries will be provided. And the rationale for summaries versus files, personnel files, is, you know, it's in our name. We're, you know, a citizens advisory committee versus an oversight committee. You know, I don't think personally it's in our purview to, you know, go into a personnel file or reinvestigate something that's been closed.
Let me jump in. So after that meeting, I did watch. I got different feedback for clarification. I know this has happened in more than one meeting. So whenever the guidelines had communications, you know, and I included others in it, with Steve as the lawyer, but also with the subcommittee themselves. And you know, what I did is I interpreted it because I'm reading 3 or 4 sections at a time. And I also went back and looked at what the intent was when City Council created us and what their intent wasn't. And there was a debate at the time. Is it going to be oversight, like some communities have an oversight, or is it going to be advisory? And I think they were pretty clear. There was a lot of very strong wills about, we're not creating a citizen oversight. We're not an official part of the complaint process. We are not part of the adjudication. So after the fact, we're not going to do, if we're not part of it during the process, they're not going to let us do it after. And it shouldn't, because that isn't, you know, when a case has been closed. Now, what I see, and, you know, this is for us to discuss, but as I read that, we take statistical data because we're representing the public and looking at, is there racial disparity? Is there any type of, even if it's not racial, are we getting a high level of complaints about a certain topic, whether it's race-based or not? It's still about the police department. Are they not getting any complaints? Maybe, and I think we went through that at the beginning of CPAC. There's a problem if they're not getting enough. It means the channels of communication aren't broad enough. Are they properly communicating all the different areas where we can do it? The CPAC's had a very major effect on that. And that was one of our first successes, to get that spread out. So the subcommittee, we're empowered. It's actually CPAC was empowered by City Council. They did not create a subcommittee. They made a recommendation, but we created it. So we gave the statistical review over to a subcommittee, and that was, the guidelines said, look at the statistics, go through it, have your discussions about recommendations. And if you see something that you think further review is, hey, we want to pull a sample of one of these, right? And that's kind of, it's not calling out an oversight. As I read it, is we want to sample one. We want to see how the process works, a sample of 2 or 3. The way I read it is, it does say a summary, right? Somebody may have misused the word files later on, but in multiple occasions, it clearly says what we're not allowed to do. And if you go down and read the bullet points in our guidelines, it's very clear on what you are not oversight. You're not adjudicating. You're not doing different things. So my interpretation is that we look for statistical anomalies, go in and look at the process. So I look at this as a redacted, right? If I see a summary, give me a summary that an officer pulled somebody over. I don't need to know the name of the officer. I don't need to know the name of the victim or the complaining party, because we don't need that to do the work we need to do. We should be able to look at the administrative process. It went from this chain to this chain to this chain, okay? And the adjudication, we're not here to say that specific adjudication was right or wrong. What we can do certainly is look at a pattern and say, you know, you've had, I'll give a good example. You've had 300 complaints over traffic, but only 2 of them have been upheld. That's not right. There's something not going on here, right? And we can question that and talk about, let's review your procedures and things like that. So when I see that, I see it as that type of a summary. It's more detailed than just, hey, the department has, you know, sometimes we get traffic complaints and this is how we handle it. Then we have a policy subcommittee for that. This is to be able to take an example with all the information redacted, information that, by the way, is FOIA. You know, any one of us could do it as FOIA, but they're helping us to bypass the FOIA process by saying, we've got a direct line of communication. We don't need to go through that contentious process to get information from the police department. Based on our creation and what our purview is, we can bypass that, but still it's a lot of the same information the public would have, because the truth is we should not, I mean, per our guidelines, you know, we're not an oversight. We shouldn't be looking in a personnel file. What do we have to do with a personnel file? A personnel file contains a lot of things. Now, can somebody go and subpoena a personnel file? Certainly, there's reason case to do that, but city council did not put that at our doorstep. Jared, go ahead. That's why we're giving our perspectives.
So the language, to further promote transparency and improve relationships between the CPD and the community, matters concerning citizen complaints against officers of CPD, the advisory council chairperson may request from the CPD liaison statistical data on citizens' police complaints. The advisory committee may also review cases from the statistical data presented on complaints. The request of documents by the advisory council will be at a duly called meeting of the advisory council. The request may only be made by the chairperson on behalf of the council. Council is encouraged to appoint a subcommittee to review complaints and report back. Further down, okay, it says, if the advisory council determines further review is warranted, the chief of police may direct the Office of Professional Standards to revisit the case. The advisory council may forward the decision of the chief to the mayor for further review. So there is language that talks about review in here, okay? I think the nuanced question of does the review recommendation back to the chief is just a recommendation and a piece of advice, right? But there is language about review, and some folks may interpret that as a level of oversight. It's not the decision-making oversight, but there is oversight. So
for full transparency for people who may not have read it, read further down in the bullet points.
the limitations.
Limitations, this is a very important because, yeah, it seems like in some cases they may have granted, but they are very clear on our limit. And that's what I was looking at too.
Members are not authorized to engage in any of the following actions or tasks as relates to the duties as members of the council. 1, incur expense or obligate the city in any manner. 2, independently investigate citizen complaints against the police department or an employee of the department. 3, investigate criminal or administrative activity. 3, conduct any activity which can be construed as an official governmental review of police actions.
Right. And so I guess my interpretation of those limitations says we're not to investigate a case that's already, or to investigate their process. We're here to give some of my perspective, you know, and that's why we're a group. And what will happen is if we don't have a consensus understanding, it's not that I send it to Steve, is I have to send the clarification question to city council to say, you're ambiguous in your language. Now, Steve can help facilitate that, but the answer comes from city council where we would have to point out, you're very ambiguous. Please clear it up for us. They make their own motion to fix our guidelines. We've done that in the past where there was some ambiguity on some of the rules we wanted to do. We went to city council and said, you need to clear it up because the debate will never end until you're clear. So I think that's maybe the point where we're at is if there is a motion to go back to the city council and move beyond what the subcommittee, they're kind of, the instructions given to them is, guys, you're going to get a summary. We're not there to relitigate. We're not relitigating. That'll never happen anyway, because, they've got protected rights. If we aren't involved, they would have to make us involved in the actual process in real time, because you can't go to, let's say Captain Bruder had a complaint out there and it was adjudicated 6 months ago, a year ago, case is closed, right? And then we come along as part of our statistical review that may happen on that. The reporting's once every quarter now. We may get to it a little bit later on. By the time that comes to pass, you've got another 6 months. He's already been cleared. He's moved on with his life. When, granted, we're not a court of law, but again, are you being fair to him 6 months after the fact to say redo that? I mean, there's courts that do that. There are people that can file lawsuits to do that. Is that really the business that we're in? And if everybody thinks we are, we go to city council and say, guys, here's the question on the table for us. Can you clarify? Okay. From my perspective as a member, right? I'm a member. I'm not a president. As a member, my perspective is we're reviewing summaries for the ability to be transparent to the public on the processes and procedures. And when we see anomalies, we call those out and we say, listen, we see anomalies. Let's read it. I mean, there's different opinions, and that's what we need to talk about now.
So I guess to clarify my question, let's take your example. We look at the stats, we see, okay, there were 5,000 complaints about thing X. 2 of them were upheld. We get that summary. Say, okay, we would like to see the decision-making process to try to figure out why it is that almost everyone gets cleared. Could we do that on the summary? Like, what do these summaries consist of? I guess is my question is.
So we haven't gotten there yet. I mean, we've looked at the statistical data first, and we haven't gotten to the point of even thinking about asking for a summary on a particular case yet.
Let me ask this, okay? Because that's a very good question. We're going on theoreticals of what we think will happen. So what we may want to do is, okay, this has been a discussion. There's no motion, so there's nothing to table. But maybe we say we ask the subcommittee as part of their report to go through the statistics and ask for just one, a random or whatever they want or a targeted summary. They review it in the format that it's given to them, and then we provide the feedback on what, because we don't know what we're getting until we get it, right? I don't think anybody's ready to hand us a sample of it. We have to go through our process. So the subcommittee can come to us if they pass their own motion to ask for it. They come to CPAC. We would in turn also have to pass a motion for that. Then I would go to the department and say, okay, CPAC, on behalf of CPAC, I'm asking for this. Now, I also want to clarify, when you read the guidelines, you see where the chair has the right. And some may interpret that to be, I go into a private room, look at a summary, and I come out and tell everybody, no. It's to keep 20 different people from calling up the police department saying, hey, I want to copy that. No, everything you do gets filtered through one person. He'll bring it back to the subcommittee or whoever wants. He brings it back to CPAC, actually, because I represent CPAC, not a subcommittee. And it's discussed. You could move it back, the whole administrative process. So I want to make sure that's clear too. But I would say, I think that's a good question for you is, and other people need, weigh in, but I would say ask them for a sample of one. So we know, and we're not arguing over, because it may contain everything we think it should.
Right. Yeah. Thank you for that clarification. Again, I'm just trying to figure out what level we're getting here. So
we don't know.
I know what we're going to get to analyze.
Yeah. I as I've talked to, whether it's Steve or the chief or whoever, and different people on us, because we all brainstorm with each other. I'm thinking we're going to see a fairly redacted copy that says, okay, Officer X pulled over victim, suspect X or victim X, however they complain it, they'll probably call it complaint at that point, and go through that process. And, okay, it was captured by this person, the intake sergeant, because they've got multiple channels. We'll get to see the channel the complaint came through. We'll go through their administrative process, whatever level it got to. Because as they go to find, the level of severity, if you're looking at the complaints, depends on the severity of the complaint, determines how high up in the food chain it goes versus, okay, it's just a general, this sergeant could have cleared that, or how far up does it go? And their punishment, the punishment they're facing, just like when you go to court, right? A misdemeanor has this level that you go to, right? But if it's a felony and you're facing this, it's determining a different path. Well, the way they disposition what that complaint is or what that offense is, they go through the same process. They have all their different levels. And I know they talked to the subcommittee about this a bunch. And I learned it at the Citizen Police Academy too. So that was awesome.
Paul.
Go ahead, Cheetah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. And let me chime in before we go too far down the rabbit hole. And I think you covered everything pretty good. It's not oversight. But everything that you're talking about processes is very important for this body to understand the processes of what we do. And that Citizen Academy is not designed, just to be fluff and fill time. We go through every facet of this department to include the complaint process. So you can have firsthand, if you're on this subcommittee, you'll at least know all the steps involved to get to a citizen complaint, an internal complaint, external complaint, and the levels that we look at. If it's a criminal complaint, what that entails, that we don't touch those. That's investigated by a separate party, objective body. So when I'm talking, and I know you're asking a lot of questions, but it goes back to what I was saying before. It's very important when we have these Citizens Academy, if you're part of this group, that we're not just there for fun. It's actually a learning process, and it's going to help you do your job on this body. This body is not designed to be an army of one. You're supposed to be representing the areas that we pull you from and educating our community. But it's not oversight. It's not. You're not adjudicating anything associated with this department and this personnel. It's not. It's as an advisory portion. And I think Jamie did a good job explaining that. And like I said, you're at liberty to go back to council, but that's really where we stand right now even with the subcommittees. So I hope that clarifies some of that with the discussion, but I encourage you. And if we need to have a review, especially this is the professional standards portion of the Citizens Academy, we'll be more than happy to do that. But it'll answer some of the questions, but you will be provided summaries of the cases. And a lot of the stuff is already available to you on the dashboard. I hope that helps.
A little bit.
Hey.
Yeah, because Chief, I would tell you probably 80 to 90% of the people in here have been to the police academy. And so if there's still questions, editorials aside, it's our responsibility to get, we ask our questions, we answer our questions, we seek clarification, right? Bunch of different perspectives. I don't know. I haven't heard yet specifically, because I've asked this question directly to a lot of people. Is there somebody that's a member, and you have the right, who's specifically asking to review files? Because I'll be open and say, the mayor's office reached out to me. Different people have reached out to me. Hey, I hear you guys are trying to go into files. And I've asked everybody I can. As the chair, I've asked everybody I can. Has anybody said that? So before we get the chief wound up, before we get the mayor wound up, anybody wound up, let's, give them a little Prozac and say, nobody's asking for that, right? Because I have not heard that being asked. So the paranoia and everything else, guys, now if somebody's putting that on the table, God bless, that's your right. Put it on the table. Is anybody putting that on the table? Is anybody asking for anything? Seriously, and this is the time to do it, so we can put this to rest or take a vote on it, and however that works out, if we need to have a vote on something. But the way we're interpreting it currently is there going to be summaries of a case. Everything's redacted. We're not adjudicating. We're not second guessing. Now we can question the process. That's part of our role. You know, we don't have to nod our heads because we think it all is right. We're not adjudicating that specific case, right? Does anybody see that differently in our ask? Either from the subcommittee, Jamie, or from any of the members of CPAC? Is there a different ask that I'm not hearing? Jamie, is your subcommittee asking for something that I'm not hearing?
No, our subcommittee is not asking for anything that you're inquiring about.
Okay, so are any members looking for us to redefine or reclarify? Okay, so you know, what I would say is we don't have a pending question. We don't have a pending legal question. We don't have a pending chief question. There are no pending questions right now. And as one arises, we'll address it. Okay. So if somebody steps out and asks for something outside of our purview, direct it back to CPAC, and we will address our members and make sure that we're doing the right thing. That's our process. So I think we've cleared that up. Is there any further discussion on what we have the ability to review? Okay, we should be good. All right. Anything else from the complaint subcommittee?
No, that's it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Okay. Next up, Dave Saunier and the ERA audit recommendations.
Yeah, so the ERA subcommittee met, I believe it was March 21st. And just as a reminder, it comprises myself, David Saunier is the chair, Jerry, Juan, Joe, and then we also had, I believe, 3 other CPAC members in attendance. I thank all of them for being interested and actually participating in some respects also in some talk back and forth. So that was really good. The purpose of the subcommittee really is to monitor the progress of what's going on with the ERA. Now, minutes haven't been approved, but I'll just talk in generalities at this time. The conversation's really focused on the 7 primary recommendations that specifically mentioned CPAC. And we were happy to then go on and talk about those. Some we felt absolutely are in our purview to really get out and tackle. Obviously, the number one thing I think that keeps floating to the top and people are very curious about is the motor vehicle stops, and we're going to work on that. Some of the others, just to be totally transparent with everyone, we felt maybe better suited for other subcommittees, maybe like a communication subcommittee, because there were a lot of recommendations specifically about going out and asking the community what they want to see, communicating with the public, all these other types of things. So we will be coming back to CPAC maybe after our next meeting with some recommendations. I actually have started to sketch out a little bit of a process map showing maybe the way that some of these items can be governed, executed upon, and then passed on and passed off kind of around. So obviously with motor vehicle stops, Jill, after the meeting, sent us an old YouTube video. And it was actually Captain Bruder's presentation on traffic stops at the time. And to be honest, not only did Captain Bruder do a great job presenting, but what I was most impressed about was the data. Some of the data is already there. I look at use of force reporting that's already out there. It's very good. It's broken down into different categories by patrol units, by male, female officers, by race of the officer, by race of the person, where the force was used. Very well broken down. And I look at that and I say, wow. And I hope the subcommittee also, they heard this from me. Wow. If we could get motor vehicle stops almost the same. And then I saw Captain Bruder's presentation and he almost had it perfect. So I think a lot of the data might be there. And so I was hoping at some point we'd put forward a request maybe to meet with some of the data team people to say, hey, it looks like some of the data is already there. How do we do it? But, you know, we also in that ERA did say, who's talking to the community and what does the community want to see and what does the community want to hear? So one of the other things we talked about is maybe talking to some of the patrol teams and saying, who are some of the more leading community leaders How can we talk to them? So a lot of talk by me right now, but really it's just to say we've had our first meeting. We're drinking out of the fire hose a little bit. We're gonna have another meeting. I'll get minutes done. But I think if we properly assign the different items, we could tackle these in some pretty quick order, and get these done. And then the other question we had, and we will once again come back to CPAC and talk to the police and talk with Steve is, do we have the obligation as a subcommittee and or CPAC to get general updates from CPD on all the other items that were recommended for to be reviewed or to have something done? So we're gonna come back. We're gonna have another meeting. I think the four of us want to really solidify what our requests might be. But you know, we'd like to think that maybe our subcommittee should get occasional updates, or CPAC should get updates on everything else that's involved in it. Because we have to communicate to our constituents, and we'd just like to know. So that's kind of where we stand. Happy to have any questions, but once again,
One of the
nothing
points you made about
formal.
his traffic video brings up, and we're going to talk about a communications subcommittee, but we there's a lot of good videos that were put together, and I don't think they're obsolete. The dashboard, some of the things we did communications subcommittee, they're all recorded. So I would turn to, I don't know if Gibson's getting promoted out of communications. You know, I'm still going to call you private. You'll never be a lieutenant to me. But Gibson, it wouldn't be a bad idea to grab those videos and use your social media channels that weren't used prior and repost those, because some of the things we heard, I know at the public forum, CAJM's public forum, and some of the ERA, when I read the reviews, they were talking about some public facing education. And I'm sitting back going, you know, we've done that. You know, we publicize it, we do whatever we can do. But at the time, I don't think social media was being used, and social media should not just be a one-time effort. Some of these things are ongoing. And so if somebody missed it in their feed today, you know, if you create like a communication recurrence and every blue moon posts it, so we have our dashboard. I think we did some of the changes on King Street. I think we did a good one on use of force. There's a lot of that stuff's really relevant. I would suggest that, you know, whoever the relevant parties are, they're in charge of those teams now, take a look at that old video, because, you know, it gets old after a week. Is it still relevant? And if it's relevant, let's redo it. We don't just communicate to the public on a subject once. Keep doing it. Keep getting it on a cycle. So Gibson, you on board with that? He'd probably do another thing, didn't he? For those that don't know, currently, I don't know if they're changing his role.
Here he is.
So
he's in charge of
no, I
communications.
definitely wasn't doing something else, but I was trying to switch over to be unmute. But yeah, so we can handle with the posting schedule and revisit it. The first thing that we're going to have to do is track down all the videos, and we're going to have to compile all of them, and then it's very simple to put that on repeat schedule. It's a very easy lift. It's not a problem at all.
No problem. Call me later. I'll teach you how to Google.
Easy enough.
No, but I appreciate that. But I think that's a good point. What other things? I think they're inaugural, but this is really the team that's going to have the most focus, that subcommittee. They're all important, but I mean, that's the public. The ERA is the public. And so anything they've called out, any concerns they have, that's under the purview. You bring, you know, if you think your recommendations are this, that's what you guys were designed for, because we as a group, it's hard for everybody to tackle everything. So anybody have any questions for
And the only thing I'd say on the ERA is right now we're planning to meet monthly. So I'll schedule that in the next couple of days with Jill and try to figure out everybody's time. And then hopefully the next time we come back, we'll have a little more bite.
My recommendation to you is that is a very, very public interest type work you're doing. So I know it's published on a city calendar. Not a lot of people see it. When you have those meetings, it's very important. Let's use social media channels. Let's use whatever to get as many people watching it. So we're not bombarded with questions we've already taught. You know, if you'd watch, you know, I love saying to people, even in my job, if you'd read my email, if you'd watched it, I mean, we told you it's there. But the more we communicate out to get the members of the public who can watch in real time or even a recording of it. Now, I know the question came up to me, so I've been reached out to by the media on the complaints subcommittee because they saw that obviously that flashed in the warning. I asked them to talk to Harrison as the chair because, I don't need to speak to everything when it comes to that. And one of the questions that was asked, do you record the meetings? And I think typically we do, but they weren't published because I think the answer given, I didn't know was the answer. The answer given was you got to do a FOIA to do that. And the reality is I would, and I'll be through Gibson, right? Does he handle that?
The FOIA requests go, I believe
Who owns who's holding on to our videos? Because I mean,
they're with the CPD.
Okay. So if we get a member of the public, what I would probably do, and we'll talk about that as part of communication subcommittee, is rather than making the public have to go through a FOIA to see one of our meetings, is the potential to have that ability for them to get it and post or whatever we need to do. But I think FOIA for copies of our meetings, I think, and I know you didn't do that. That wasn't on you at all. So I don't want anybody to look at, even though I'm looking at Jill. Jill's the one that gave me the answer and clarified, because when he said that to me, I'm like, we don't have to do a FOIA for our meeting. And the answer was, yeah, based on the predecessors and the policy that was in place before Jill came along, I think they did because it just wasn't posted. So I do know we want to, these subcommittees are really important. There's a lot of people that want to watch them, and it saves us headaches, right? I'd rather them hear you, Dave, than hear Paul's summary of what Dave said, right?
So right now, when they are recorded, they just are held within CPD?
Correct.
Or they don't go out onto
Yeah.
YouTube? Or-
We've never actually, and this is in my tenure, we've never had a request to view those subcommittee meetings
Okay.
before. So the practice that we have in place is that we record them, and then the links to the recordings get sent to the chairs so they can recall the meeting for the summaries.
Okay.
And that's the practice that we have in place.
Now, your video, are you posting that in, are you giving a link to a file folder that you
Yeah,
have?
it's a link to the Zoom repository where the recordings.
You wouldn't distribute that to the public. So
Yeah, we'd have to find some other way if that was the decision that was.
easily done. And when we have a communication subcommittee, we just say, okay, we'll talk to Steve and whoever and Gibson, whoever, if there's a YouTube channel, we can use to post it or to request that it be posted up. But I don't want to think that, if the media, because we have had media requests, they do this with city council meetings. How many people can meet our schedule? But we have a lot of interest after the fact. And the more we make available after the fact, I want people to hear our discussions. When they can only read our minutes, it doesn't look like we're doing much, does it? Because the minutes are a reflection of official motions and things like that, not the spirited debates that we have, the discussions, people making great points. People are going to assume we disregard that stuff. We don't know. We talk about it. We talk about it pretty vigorously, sometimes contentiously, right? And so the more the public can see, I want them, they do get the recording. CPAC.
These meetings go out.
Correct.
Yeah,
Because
this
they're
is
already
currently
live.
being live
Right,
streamed, correct?
exactly.
It's just
They're live streams, but they're also recorded.
They're also recorded and posted.
Yeah, so what happens now, we're actually live on YouTube at this moment.
Exactly.
And then once we're done, the recording lives there.
It lives there,
forever,
correct.
yeah.
Right, just
But
not.
that's not the
subjects.
same practice with the subcommittee.
Correct.
And I'll tell the new members, just so you know, if a police officer, if you're going to do a ride along or anything else and they know your name, it's nothing nefarious. They actually watch this. And I asked one of them, some of y'all have heard this, I went to do a ride along and I was there for somebody else. And the police officer that stopped me, said, hey, you want to ride with me? He goes, I know who you are. And I looked at him, I was kind of surprised by it. And he said, I know you from the CPAC meetings. I said, really? How do you know me from CPAC meetings? He goes, I watch it. And I was pretty flippant about it. I said, you're really that bored? He said, it's not bored. You're talking about my job. So that's the importance of what we're doing. And so they do watch it. And it's an important thing. So let's talk about that under the communications, because I want to make sure that that's not held up. What else for ERA?
So that's it for ERA. Any questions? We'll have more solid information for you, hopefully at the next meeting.
Okay. And do you know when your next meeting is?
I'm going to schedule it this week.
Cool.
Yeah, I'll answer.
All right. The next one. Okay. So we don't need to, contrary to how many times I've changed this agenda in 10 minutes, we don't need to create a communication subcommittee. Everybody asked me that. The CPAC already created a communication subcommittee a long time ago. Especially during COVID, when we weren't going out into the public and meeting, we created it for the purpose of probably most of what the ERA assessment references CPAC about. We're not public, we're not transparent, and we had a good initiative to do that. And like anything else, when you're dealing with volunteers, people move in and out, people move into different roles, that kind of slid below. My perspective is I see that one of the most important subcommittees we have, because that's the group that should be grabbing it for what are the needs of the community to hear, right? You let them go out there and survey and find out. And we did a lot of that. I mean, even during COVID, we asked the police department, what are your things? And, they'll always tell us, let's do the opiate thing again. It's like, okay, how many people are going to tune in? It's a great subject, but, we like more of the use of force. We had one for the traffic stops where, some people said, well, let it be a lecture on what you should do when you're stopped. And it's like, well, let's make it part that and part of what we can expect from the Charleston Police Department when we're stopped, because they have certain things they have for the public too. So we want to get that started again. We just need a chair of that subcommittee. So who has, remember, volunteered comes before voluntold. Anybody have an interest in chairing the communications subcommittee? Don't look down. You want to handle that one? Yeah. Not you can. I want to hear that. I want to hear that excitement in your voice.
Sure.
Bring youth to the. I mean, are there volunteers? Do I see any volunteers online? All right. As the chair for Robert's Rules, I get to appoint subcommittee chairs. It's not a vote. So unless anybody's got an objection to him. And if you do, you just raise your hand to be the volunteer. I mean, that's just how those objections work. All right. I was the previous chair of it. I'll coach you through it. It's a lot of fun. And we'll make sure you have plenty of attendance, because guys, if you're involved in the ERA, it's all about communications. If you're about complaints, it's all about communications. If you're talking about Doris was talking about policy changes. How does the public know what policy changes we're doing? They don't get the details, right? So you'll be fully ramped up. Any questions? Oh, and by the way, welcome to our executive subcommittee. You didn't know that you were walking in the door. All right. Any questions about what we should do with the subcommittee before we let them in? Just get used to that role. See, look at that.
Yeah.
Volunteer. Gene's volunteer number one.
Be quiet about that.
Volunteer number one. Right. And what I'll do is I'll make sure that we get you a real good liaison from the police department so that you can work hand in hand with that. All right. Any other subcommittee comments, questions, concerns? Hearing none, I'm going to turn to Miss Jillian. Dr. Jillian.
Okay, yes. I'll try to keep, I know last time I talked for a while, so I'll try to keep this brief this time. I do believe the chief did pretty much cover a lot of ground that I was going to discuss today, mainly regarding the ERA report that we're going to be coming out within the next few days. That's also in line with our annual report and the Office of Internal Affairs annual report. I can't get into the details because, as you probably can imagine, we're still going through all of the information that's in there, having a lot of eyes on it, making sure that we, when we're ready to discuss it, we can discuss it thoroughly. I will say, I know, Suzanne, you mentioned questions regarding specific parts of that. We do, in the report, go through each of the recommendations. There are 72 that we received from CNA that were assessed by ERA, and then ERA had another 24. So we address every single one of those. And as the chief has mentioned before, our intention is to intertwine those suggestions where we're going to have ongoing work into the strategic plan. So we will be addressing that. So we're excited to finally talk about that. And that's what we've been working diligently on as a department. And there've been a lot of people that have contributed to that. So stay tuned. We will be ready to, we'll first discuss it, I believe, with the Public Safety Committee and City Council, and then we'll be available to discuss that with you at the next meeting, or if you want to have another meeting to discuss that, we can, or at the subcommittee, we can certainly talk about that. Yes.
Let me ask you a question on that, though, real quick.
Yep.
So in knowing, some of the public feedback for us and, on the reporting out of that, currently, does the department have any beyond, I mean, obviously you report to us and our job is the public side of it and whatever, and you report to City Council. And are you looking at any public forums to do this, or are you looking to channel this through both the city council report and then giving, explaining it to CPAC and then expecting us to facilitate? How do you want to do that? How are y'all
I mean,
planning?
I think that our intention currently is to work with you all on getting your advice on how we can best put the information out there. So we're gonna lean heavily on you. Into the intention of the CPAC is really to help us spread the information far and wide. And so we're really gonna lean on you to try to advise us and help us reach the broadest audience possible. So currently, like, we're right now not deciding any specific forums. We'd like to talk to you about what would work best and then consider all your suggestions to be able to get the broadest number of people aware of seeing the audit, the ERA report, and then what the department looks to do in the future.
Well, I would say that should be a cross collaboration between the communications subcommittee and the ERA. Because, do we hold, a forum? Do we do kind of like our monster Zoom town hall where you actually get a lot of, pretty good spread of, so.
I mean, it was on the various news stations when it came out, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
so it does get a lot of coverage, but really also bring people that you represent into the fold, because we'd like to hear from everybody.
I mean, I think this is a hugely positive step. Well, I'm assuming it will be a lot of good information. And I just don't think most departments do the best job communicating the positive. It's always the bad things and having to, explain why something went wrong. So this is a big positive step, and we should really get out there and do what we can to say what a great job is being done by everybody. So
yeah, we appreciate that and would appreciate your support.
Jerry.
Also, let me just mention, it looks like Logan McVeigh from the city just joined, just making everyone aware of that.
Hey, Logan, being late's like being pregnant. You can't just be a little.
Hi, Logan.
Well, I was on the YouTube. I was your one witness on YouTube this whole time. So
It's working.
I was for this part, I was like, oh, I bet I can find that Zoom link. So heck, I'm here.
Thank Jerry.
Well, thanks for shaving for us. You look good. All right.
Jerry.
Jerry.
So you're anticipating going and presenting to the Public Safety Committee in April and May?
That's not determined yet. That would be the first step. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
let me
sorry.
answer that. No, this will be discussed and nothing's been detailed. You'll get the information as soon as we know it. We would like to get the reports finalized and sent over to the administration so they can review, and then it will be published, and then we can start talking about next steps. So as far as definitive dates, I don't have one for you.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions on that part? All right, Joe, I know I interrupted you, but I wanted to make sure we did that.
Oh, yeah, no problem. And the only other thing, I'll keep this brief. We are continuing to, this group is interested in our smart policing grant. We continue to work on our action plan, which was the next step in the process to get the release of the full $800,000. So we're working on making sure we actually have drafted that, and it's basically a restatement of our application, but there's more of an emphasis on the evaluation component. So we've been working hand in hand with our research partner to fine tune not only what we're going to do, or what we plan to do, but how we're going to measure it and know that it made a difference. I'm using rigorous external evaluation. And so we met with our technical assistance provider today. They'll be offering us some feedback. Then we'll send that report back in, and hopefully once BJA, which is the granting organization, approves it, we will have the full $800,000, which will allow us to start on the effort in earnest, and also release the money for us to start our procurement for the software that we're all interested in obtaining and being able to build up our resources. There was a question about that at I believe it was the ERA subcommittee meeting, in terms of when we thought those reports and the interactive nature of that software would be available. And we're, just so everyone's aware, there are a lot of steps involved in procuring software, testing it, implementing it, and then getting it online. So we're not really looking for that to be online until 2025. But it takes a lot of time to do a big overhaul like that. So just so everyone here is aware that we're not looking to have that functionality in a couple of months, but it's something that we'll build up to. And I think that you all as a group will be very helpful in helping us assess whether what we have created is usable, is understandable, and will inform the efforts of this group and also answer some of the community's questions. So that's where we are with that.
So
yes,
is that action plan in the public domain?
No, sir. It may become, it's possible that BJA may post that, and if they do, I'll certainly make you aware.
I'm sorry, who?
BJA, the Bureau of Justice Assistance, that requires we create it. But if it is posted, I'll certainly make this group aware.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
All right.
And that's all for me.
All right. Any final questions for Jill? All right, the man of the hour. Captain Cretella can't be with us today. We thank Lieutenant Bailey for coming, and we thank you mostly for not wearing a bow tie like Captain Cretella.
I can't pull that off like him. You'll never see me in a bow tie. So really kind of Chief hit on it, Jill hit on it. We're in the final stages of both the annual report and the IA report. Those are in their final review process. They get complete. They're going to be sent to the mayor's office to be have eyes on before they get published. But we are in the last lap of that. So hopefully once we get that, it gets published, y'all can get eyes on all three in terms of the internal affairs report. Once y'all do get eyes on it and you'll have any questions, I'm all ears to discuss any numbers or wording that is in there that might not be clear on y'all's end.
Thank you. Any questions on that? So one of the things that I look at with all these reports we're talking about and all the different, they got to go report to the the public safety and then the CPAC. What I would encourage each of us to do is, if that's your area of interest, or just being a member of CPAC, tune into it, watch the recording of it, and come to this group. Get yourself on the agenda. Just say, hey, Paul, I heard, I sat through that. I heard it. I want to come and give a recap, because the truth is, I just have to. I talk about execution, right? The truth is, department's not going to do 50 different meetings for 50 different groups. So, while we want these things, we'll likely often get, hey guys, it's posted on a website. We know that they've already given out 5, 6, 7 reports, and we're asking them, here, can you come do it again? And it's like, guys, we've done it. And we have access. It's public. So what I would ask is those things come up. I think, Jerry, you're really good at being on top of that calendar. If you see it on agenda or something like that, for whether it's for public safety or for the city council, send a note to the group, and we'll look to get 1 or 2 people who are willing to sit through it, read it, and whatever, and then come to our next meeting and give everybody a report. Or even if you want to do an email right after the fact in real time, send an email, just say, hey, I listened to that. Are these minutes for us? Is it an official meeting? No, it's information, because you're just regurgitating what you heard, right? And maybe call out some of the highlighted points that would be of interest to us and things like that. Because the fact is, we can't, it's a police department, and we can't expect them to constantly, hey guys, go do a tour of these 50 different venues to give the same speech. No, they'd rather do one venue and have 50 different groups come attend, right? We want to kind of help reach a bridge in the middle, right? We want to get information. We want to report it out. We want to do our job, but let's help with that process. Okay. You guys agree with that? I think that's good for us.
Yeah, and I think the chief's comment that we will get the heads up when they're ready, after they've gone to the mayor and proceeding to public safety committee, we'll get a heads up. Then folks should, we should probably send out a notice saying, hey, the presentation we made at the public safety committee, and then folks can see it in real time at that point.
And Jerry, I'll be the naysayer. Our notification it'll be on the agenda. I mean, that's likely our advanced notification. They do post these in advance. And that's what we kind of want to make let's make sure we're monitoring that. And I'll help out with that. I know I'm bad at it. Jerry's an expert at it. Jerry will call me and say, this is on the agenda. No, I didn't, I'm doing my job. I don't really always look at that. He does a great job of it. So Jerry, if you could, you can go through those and send a digest.
And that's what happens to me. Say something, you get it.
Yeah,
Leadership 101, baby. Been in military school since I was 15. I know. But I think that's a good way of handling that process too, is let's make sure we're tapping into all these channels. No different than, if Cajun or one of these groups is having a meeting, our job, really our job is not just information down from the police department. It's to be able to go to these various groups, not only to listen, because God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth. we're going to become, when we go to these meetings, I'm not a spectator, right? You know, if I'm there to be representative, just like no different than you all, you know, let's make sure that we're representing what CPAC's doing. We're providing education to groups that may have just generic questions, because we are privy to information. I mean, it's recorded, granted, but we do have the eyes and ears of the police department. We do have that. And so us going into the community to you know, I use Cajun just because Suzanne's here. There's a lot of different groups. Go to them, ask, you know, hey, I know you're talking about this, or this is a big subject, or, you know, it happens. They may make a statement in a meeting that, well, we've heard something different. Do you mind if I share my perspective? Because in working with them, I've come to learn this. I've read this policy. I know this is out there. You're educating, because those groups are not just advocacy groups, they're education groups. And so we can help be a part of that as our upstream and downstream, right? Because I don't plan on just going to anybody's meeting just to sit there and watch. If you invite me, you better expect I'm probably going to show up with an opinion or something to say, because I'm not there just to listen to you. It's a collaboration, or I don't want to go, right? Okay.
Jerry,
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
could we get a list of the dates of your meetings that we might be interested in attending?
For the ERNA part, or the big.
Anytime you talk about policing.
Well, one big meeting we have that is our once a year, yearly, whatever, it will summarize all of our issues, but also policing, is on April 15th. It's called our Nehemiah Action. It's at Mount Moriah Missionary Baptist Church at 7 p.m. And you will hear all of what Cajun does, how it advocates, and there'll be a piece on policing. And then I was going to connect with Dave afterwards on, you know, how do we connect up with subcommittees and that kind of thing. So maybe the best way to figure out how to do that is, I'd like to share all that with you, but I don't want to, I want to figure out what are the most impactful ones for you to attend. So if you don't mind, we can spend a couple minutes and do that.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I mean, the more of us working it together, the better.
And she can do that through you all, and then, you know, through communications, that's part of communications, just, you know, disseminate to the group. And if we can get a representative to go and participate, I think that's a perfect example of us fulfilling our charter, our interests, and even with the audit called us out for, is that we're not doing enough of that. No, I appreciate it. Thank you, Suzanne. All right, what other questions or comments on that? All right, so next up, Captain Bruder. I know is this your last time doing this one?
We'll see.
All right.
So I have on the agenda to talk about constitutional carry that I'm just a designated spokesperson, but I'm sure most of you heard that the law for carrying firearms, really pistols and handguns in the state, was reduced or changed so that you don't any longer have to have a permit to carry it either on your person or concealed in any manner. So Steve took the lead on that, and we had to hold a master roll call and cover all that. As far as, you know, it just changes an officer, you know, now somebody walking down the street with a gun in their waistband, that used to be what we would call a clue in our work. That's no longer, that's perfectly legal and everything like that. So there are some situations, and depending on the person's background, where it may be illegal, but you don't really know that just by looking at somebody. So we did have to do some training to make sure officers understood. That was signed at like 6 o'clock on I think I was on one of the subcommittee meetings when it was actually signed into law. And so it went effect immediately upon his signature. So that put us in a little bit of a scramble, because we were still trying to get the actual copy of what was signed. But we were able to get that rolled out pretty quick. So far, I'm not aware of any issues with that or anything like that we've come across. But Steve's been great by being on speed dial for us if we do something.
One of the biggest impacts is the pretextual stop, right? You know, before, if you saw somebody walking on a gun, that was a reason you could stop them.
That's not pretext. That's
or whatever it's probable cause. Now it's not, right?
Yeah. So
now, yeah.
Yeah. So that's what we had to, you know, like I said, somebody walking down the street with a gun in their waistband usually was a clue and was a reason to stop somebody, because typically people that are permitted to do that they too have an obligation to conceal it. And then when the law changed a year or so ago to constitutional carry, permitted carry, we had to change some things with that. So just kind of just another step in that process. So just a little bit of an education there, making sure officers understand the standards.
So is a concealed weapon holder, I had a legal requirement if I was pulled over. I haven't been yet. I've got to announce it the minute. That was a legal requirement. That's no longer a legal requirement. So that, okay.
There's no permit to do it.
Right. Have you all seen any, I mean, in real time, have you seen any impact on that yet?
Chief, if you want to comment to that, I'm directly in that all the time.
Huh?
So if you want to comment on that, go ahead.
Yeah, so no, Paul, your answer to your question is no. And that's just it. The biggest thing for the public safety community is the education piece, the way it was rolled out. So everyone is playing catch up. So it impacts everything from training, traffic stops, how we engage during person stops. So the biggest thing, biggest push with public safety is to make sure, one, our officers know the law. We're educated on the law. And two, no one is overreacting, pro or con with that. The general public is still learning this too. So everyone is in the same boat. We haven't seen the uptick or anything here in the city of Charleston. I was actually in Columbia yesterday at a legislation session with the Chiefs of Police Association. The only one that actually said they seen some changes was in Greenville City. But we haven't had any incidents at all here, knock on wood. But the biggest thing is, one, just to quell everyone's anxiety. I actually had a chance to talk to a lot of people from Tennessee and Arizona at the time the governor signed this law. And that was one of the things they said, they've had a constitutional carry in place for quite some time. And they said they didn't. They didn't. Bad guys are still going to be bad guys. If you don't supposed to have a gun and decide to commit a crime, that's still going to happen. But the biggest thing for us is that public safety, standpoint to make sure we actually understand the legislation that's been signed. And it's not just Charleston, it's across the state. Chief Keel pushed out some memos, the Criminal Justice Academy. Everyone is scrambling to make sure that we educate public safety on this new law. So we just want to try to quell the anxiety. We haven't seen an uptick in anything, and I want to push that out for the community. I don't want anyone walking around thinking it's doomsday. It hasn't been. We haven't seen it.
Well,
So I just,
Chief, I would say from my perspective, maybe some of your peers in public safety create that anxiety because there's a lot of, when this legislation is being proposed, which I understand, it's usually the chiefs of police and public safety leaders that are, they're claiming the gloom and doom, which I get. I understand why. And so your perspective is a little bit different than what we're normally, we as a public are hearing. I think that public safety leaders sometimes create, not you, but your compadres, create that anxiety. So I almost think that that's a communication opportunity for us, not only, to have maybe a public session on educating the public on what it means too. Because do we have that?
well, no, and I think, not to jump the gun, Paul, and like I say, we still got to wait. It's still in that wait and see mode, because one of the biggest parts of this legislation is that 18-year-old age range, okay? So I would be, anxiety wasn't created by public safety. It is what it is. We see it on a daily basis. We don't have to watch the news station or hear third party. This is what we see. And that demographic, what we're dealing with, especially with the violence, is between 13 and 19. So, personal opinions don't matter with this. It don't. It absolutely does not matter. I believe wholeheartedly in the way our government is set up. We're the executive branch and we enforce the law. So our legislators are responsible for drafting the law. And like I said, for public safety, our response is to make sure that we're educated and it's being, pretty much enforced fair and across the board with public safety in mind.
Do you think from your perspective that the public needs an educational piece that CPAC could facilitate? Or do you think that's mostly just limited to what your needs are internally?
Well, no, I think like I said, we're still in that mode, you know, we're still at, even from a state, trying to educate ourselves before we start trying to educate, you know, a second party. And I think we really need to get all our things in order first and foremost. And I think down the road, absolutely. Just like with any other legislation, we'll be more than happy to educate our community. But it's very important that we get this right from a public safety standpoint, first and foremost.
Any questions for the chief on that? No? Any for Jason? All right. Thank you, Chief. Jason, CPD events.
Yes, sir. So the big one, obviously, this isn't necessarily just a community outreach or community policing type thing, but bridge runs this weekend. So if you're out and about, say hey to the officers. Just about everyone in our department will be working Saturday at some point, most of them Saturday morning to secure that major event. So we'll all be out there and those are some long days. So any bit of thank you or hey, how you doing is always appreciated. So it's already been mentioned, Citizens Academy. I won't continue on about that. It starts next Wednesday and runs for those 8 weeks. We are also hosting a wellness day event for health and wellness for unsheltered and those at risk of losing housing. That's going to be down at Trident Tech on the Palmer campus. Not this Saturday, but the next. So we're doing that lunchtime down there and working with some other vendors and agencies to just try to provide that service to them as those resources. A couple other things. All this is in an email. I think you'll already have. There's going to be a game at the Charleston Battery for Hero Night. We'll have some representation there. Dragon Boat Race, a big one for law enforcement across the country. Our local FOP Lodge will be doing a Police Week memorial service. It's at 11 o'clock across the street here at Middlebank Park at Memorial May 9th. So certainly come out and support it and attend that. And then the really big one we're gearing up for again, the CPD open house. It'll be our first one in a couple of years. So we'll be doing an open house on May 23rd from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. There'll be guided tours through the department and all that kind of stuff. The link went out. It's on Eventbrite, so you can certainly Google an Eventbrite, sign up, register, all that kind of stuff. And
I'll send out that announcement to you all tomorrow, just so you have it on the open house.
That's the major big things that y'all's participation will be helpful in, or just seeing y'all out about there. Community outreach continues to do a lot of their weekly stuff with the Gathering Center, Multipurpose Center, and senior citizen presentations, all that kind of stuff that they're doing out there in the field. But I doubt y'all want to go to the pharmacy every week and those type of things.
Sure.
Yeah, I just want to highlight the April 13th Wellness Day event. One of the questions, pressures of the things that the police are asked to address, and the unsheltered is a major concern. Some of those folks are, as pointed out in the ERNA report, the whole question. Some folks who are unsheltered have mental health issues. And this is, I think, a good opportunity for us to get smart about what the department's doing. So I would urge people to pay some attention to that.
Well, it's just organized by us. It's a lot of resources that are coming. I think there's over a dozen different resources that are going to be down there, just localized. And the Hope Center did one a few months ago, and it was good for them. So we're just kind of bouncing around, helping them work in the city. Those resources known to people.
And if you want a snapshot of what they're facing on mental health, do a ride along. Because you won't make it through a single shift without seeing at least one or two cases of it and how they handle it. So you're not talking about theory, you're talking about seeing how are these people, how are they handling it? So thank you. The other thing, if you've never been to one of their open houses, it's actually pretty fun. You get your picture taken in the chief's office, go see, where they'll hang out. You see, really the coolest part of it, I mean, besides going through fingerprinting, whatever that you do in the police academy, is up in the communications room. You get to kind of stick your head in and see all the different cameras that are around. Everybody looking at you like, really? I didn't know there's a camera there. So it's kind of fun, but you realize there's a lot behind the scenes of what they do, that just that simple walkthrough, you grab a burger before you go in and you worm your way around and you get to see some pretty neat stuff. But most importantly of all, you get to thank. I mean, you really get to thank the different people. And the officers get a lot of the love. They really do. They get a lot of the hate. They get a lot of the love too. But you get to see a lot of the civilian employees who don't get the attention And, you know, just like when I was in the military, so civilians ran the military. They couldn't wake up and do their job for 1 minute without all these civilian employees here. So that's probably the best opportunity to see them show interest in what they do, right? Because they have a lot of administrative employees who do a lot of work that make Jason look good. I don't know how well they're doing for Lieutenant Bailey, but they do make Jason look good. All right. Okay. With that said, any old business we need to retake up? Okay, hearing none. New business. Dave, you asked to speak to.
Yeah, so just real quick, you know, I see with the ERA and obviously with some of the other subcommittees and some of the information we're looking to get going, we're all looking essentially for data. And what I quickly learned just by once again seeing Captain Bruder's video is the data's already there. And the last thing I want to do as a subcommittee member or as a CPAC member is to make extra work on the police, anybody within the department. Although I think they know we need some information. And so I don't want to duplicate anything. I don't want to duplicate reporting. But how do we know whether we're asking for that duplication of reporting or for one-off reporting that's going to cause them a lot of heartache when maybe it's not as necessary to something else, other than, is there somebody amongst us that really can sit down with the data people, right? And say, what do we have? What is there? And what's the best way to report it, right?
I think, yeah, well,
I think
that's it's somewhat, to me, it's somewhat nebulous because they could say that answer is always going to be, it depends. You know, we got a tool that can pretty much, are you asking?
And it's also changing, right, with their new tool. And so can we somehow understand and be involved in that?
It's like any software sector. We get, you know, like I obviously, you know, you guys, most, you know, I've worked with Oracle and whoever, that clients will ask those types of questions and we'll always say, well, it depends. We've got 300 canned reports that, you know, we just push a button, it comes out. But to answer your bigger question, we have the ad hoc ability to go in there and go beep, 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 and we do this and we do whatever we do. To create a library is almost an impossible ask because it really depends. The best thing to do is, as you have a data need, you're connected with, you know, whether it's Jason, who's the data guru of the department, he loves that stuff, or one of his designees, having that liaison to, before you get built up into a frenzy or it's, hey, you know, I'm not saying because it's a little bit of work, we don't do it, but hey, do you already have this? Do you already have this? Do you already have this? Is it in a format we could see? And just having that line of communication before we bring it out to the masses. And now, as we put on the table, and, you know, we all should do our education. That's why we're linked. You know, like the chief keeps talking about the police academy. Probably my biggest value out of the police academy was the connection to the different people who own the different things. That's really, I mean, a lot of the stuff they do, I knew. It was, oh, wow. So I met, you know, so I think Sergeant DeBose at the time, who was an even bigger data nerd. And I learned who did, and it's learning those connections. So as CPAC, no, you know, we do want to filter our requests, right? We're not here to put burdens on them, create work for them. We have specific liaison channels, and with their green light. So I would first, like data, I'm the kind of guy that would say, Jason, I don't know your whole staff because I don't know what they're assigned to. Jason, you're our liaison. I got a question about data. What are your thoughts? And he'll turn around and say, oh, I'm going to make you talk to DeBose. That's his, and he'll work out a calendar and stuff like that. I think that's easier. That's my perspective on dealing with them. Is I ask someone at the top. I don't go to the chief for that because hopefully he's too busy and too important for that. But we've been given various liaisons. It's our job to keep track of what's their specialty. I'm not going to go to Jason for anything about internal affairs or anything like that, professional standards. He could probably answer it, but that's not fair to him. I'm going to go to Captain Cortell and Lieutenant Bailey. So while we hear them come in these meetings, we see their reports. It's our job to make notes and remember. And I think what'll be huge when we get their new org chart, which y'all have never had a copy of, is when we see an org chart, you can start looking at it. Now, I would say to you as the chair of CPAC, don't look and, oh, you know, there's an admin clerk, I'm going to reach out to them. No. You look at the top, you know, the leadership of that food chain and say, okay, who's in charge of that division? Who's in charge of that group? And let them do that. And when in doubt, go to our CPAC liaison first, whether it's Jill or right now it's Captain Bruder. Let them direct you, right? Because they know there's competing interests. If you reach out too low in the food chain, what happens is they're going to help you because they're all helpful people, but they may have been in charge of doing something else and we may have gotten them in trouble inadvertently. We overstepped ourselves. We got them in trouble. They were trying to help. There's nothing in business and in life. There's nothing more dangerous than doing somebody a favor. That's the worst thing you ever do in life because it always comes back to haunt you, right? And so in their world, they're trying to help you and it could hurt. So, Jill's always, for anybody who has not reached out to her for a need, she's pretty real time, even though Cheetah reminds me all the time, she works for me, not you. So I get it. I feel you. We don't put too much on her plate either, but if it's a quick email or something, use her liaison.
I just think we're gonna be asking for a lot more data and reports and all that, right? And it's just, I've been on your side before and this type of stuff, and I think it's important that I don't want you guys to have to recreate the wheel, but we want, and
that's why it's important for your subcommittee or any of the subcommittees, like communications should be working with the PIO, right? Your subcommittee, my perspective, you shouldn't meet without a representative because if you're looking for data, you should never be meeting without the liaison for that, who can give you in real time what's possible, what's not, and help shape it. Now, I mean, I'm not saying you're going to 100% agree. There are times where, hey, well, we've seen pushback, guys.
Yeah.
CPAC is not a fan club. Let me make that very clear. We're not a fan club. There have been many times where we've gotten pushback, and that's natural. That's their job. And we've said, well, we hear the pushback, but I'm going to still be resolute. We have a mission too. How do we meet in the middle, or how do we escalate this concern to get what we need? So, but first step is always working together. We don't have, it's just like with the complaints. Everybody's treating it like we had a problem. We really didn't have an identified problem. We were just raising hell for no reason, right?
Oh,
yes, sir.
If I could, just on that point, one thing that's always difficult for policing is that most of our system and most of our data is based off facilitating the process. It's not typically to answer questions that people have, right? And that's the transition that's happening and why we're having to have all these discussions. And I mentioned that too, don't get bogged down in the data. Think about what question you're trying to answer and if we can reverse it from there. Because, I'll go back 8-10 years. We got a request from the Post and Courier. How many people do you search each year? We had no idea because although searching is something that we do, we didn't capture it to answer that. So we had to meet and decide, okay, is this something that we think we should be able to answer at a readily available? And we all decided yes. So we changed policy, we changed procedure, we created a way to collect the data. And then we learned in our audit that we didn't create a way to monitor that it was being done correctly. And so then we had to adjust again. So sometimes it's not just, hey, do you have this? Oh, yes or no. It's if you all feel there's value in answering these questions, then we have to start discussing that. So don't just get bogged down in, because you would ask me, do we document when we search people? Yes. Right. I don't go back then. Yes, we do. Every time we search somebody, we document, but we didn't have it readily available to discern that. So it's those types of things that just think about what you're wanting to attain or what's the question that's raising, and then can we answer that with data? Right. Because the other way may be just like a sample check, like similar to what you were talking about with the complaints. Like, let's just spot check it. Let's pull it random and go, oh, okay. These are the couple of things we're seeing that we need to continue down this road. And then before we build a whole report and spend months of building a report, we might be spot checking and not have an issue that we even need to address. So.
Good. All right, that's it.
All right. And the only other piece of new business that I would say is something that we didn't do at the beginning. Colby, you need to introduce yourself to us and tell us a little bit about you now that you've heard us talking for a while.
Absolutely. Well, first, I recognize the need to not open my mouth during meetings so that I don't get told to do things. I'll sit over here nice and quiet. I grew up in Somerville, went to Somerville High, then went to the College of Charleston, graduated College of Charleston, moved to California for a short bit, and then moved back in 2006 to Daniel Island. So I've lived on Daniel Island since then. I own the Daniel Island Ferry. If anybody wants to get out on the water, let me know. Shoot me a text. We'll get you on the boat. Married, 3 kids. Last one is 15. So now he's getting ready to go into his junior year next year. Plays football. And that's kind of about it. I'm the vice president of the property owners on DI. I'm on the Danielle Community Fund board. So actively involved, to the extent that I can be. And, looking forward to helping however I can with CPAC and help support the police and what they're doing. And, Chief, my son is dating, Greg Gomes' daughter.
He actually had,
Oh,
yeah, he did say thank you.
He
I
wanted,
was glad to see it.
Greg Gomes wanted to say, Chief Gomes of North Charleston Police wanted me to say hello to Cheeto.
I'll make sure he-
You're always welcome to
Sorry,
reach out to him
Yeah.
privately. He'll take your call anytime you want.
Yeah.
Now,
That's it.
now, having heard us see our composition, what do you think one of your primary areas of interest in what our guideline,
I need to learn more, but one question that I had that I was embarrassed to ask, what does ERA stand for?
That's
well, don't be embarrassed. That's why.
No,
we
I-
have to too.
External review and assessment. All right.
It's a long.
Excellent.
There's a short, there's a short version.
That summary.
They just told you what the acronym is. Dave, do you want to give him a very quick summary of what the ERA was and why we went through the process? I've got my subcommittee chair answer that question. Go ahead.
So in 2019, this department took on an audit that was voluntary but community supported to look at racial bias in decision-making. That audit resulted in 72 recommendations, which over the next several years, the department worked hard to implement. And so this assessment that happened in 2023 was the last part of that process, to bring in a team of outside researchers to assess the work done, talk to members of the community to look at some data, and then provide kind of a report how well they did. And predominantly 54 of those recommendations were found to be completed. I think 11 were, there was some work done, but additional work needed, and 2 needed more work. So, but I can certainly get you all that information if you want to.
Online.
Yeah.
I mean, if you go to the CPD website and all the reporting and all the internal affairs reporting they do and.
And so
I would say in answer to your question, nothing I've heard is not of interest. Nothing jumps out. I feel like I don't know enough yet to be able to say, this is what I really would like to do. But each time I'm hearing what the committees do, I say, oh, I could do that. And I have participated in a couple of committees.
Yeah, I think just join, I would say participate in each one of them, just to get a feel for what they do. The policy subcommittee, that's a great one. It's very technical what they do. They talk about some good things, but it's really going over policy recommendations. But for the ERA, the reason why ERA is important is it wasn't just a pass fail. So what they did is they also came out of that with a lot of recommendations. There were recommendations for how we could do things better. There were recommendations for, areas of police department. Doesn't mean they're going to enact all of them, because that's really, at the end of the day, it was an opinion, given an educated opinion, but an opinion. So that's why there's, it wasn't just a pass fail. So we created a subcommittee because, our job is to represent the public in doing that internal, in that look and addressing some of these, not just things that we were called out for, we could do better as CPAC, but the ERA said, you guys were created as representatives to do this, kind of be there. And maybe you're falling short for a lot of reasons, right? We're falling short. Number one was for membership. If you only have 8 people showing up, 5 people showing up to meetings, which is pretty much where we were at a certain point, we did an evolution of membership. So believe it or not, most of the people in the room, other than me and Jerry that are in the room, and then online, Doris is a long timer with us. All of you are new within the past year. Some of you within months. So, and that's good because it's healthy perspectives. We don't get into the group speak and the mind thought and the vacuum, but that's a big part of what they're doing. Is that's probably our public facing right now, because the question's on the table. Cool. Any other questions, comments, concerns? All right, officers, do you all have anything for us? No, you ready to go home and eat your dinner? All right, so being 7:09,